I didn't panic when my fingers found the flash drive under my car seat. I didn't jerk back. I didn't even look around like someone might be watching. I just closed my hand around it and held it there, still, like it had always belonged to me. My son thought I wouldn't notice. He thought grief makes you blind. The plastic was warm, not from the engine, from a pocket, from being handled minutes ago. Whoever hit it wanted it close, but not close enough to get caught with it. I sat in the driver's seat in my own driveway, staring at the steering wheel like it might explain why my chest suddenly felt too tight for air. The porch light threw a thin yellow line across the windshield. Somewhere down the street, a dog barked once, then stopped, like even it knew to stay quiet. I didn't cry. I made a decision. I took the flash drive inside, plugged it into my laptop, and copied everything. And before the kettle even finished boiling, I heard my son's voice coming from my speakers say my name like I was already gone. My name is Alden Cross, and for the first time in my life, I realized the person I raised had been studying me like a weakness. The flash drive wasn't labeled. Of course it wasn't. People doing clean things don't hide them under seats. The metal cap had a tiny scratch across it, like it had been dropped once and picked up fast. I recognized that scratch. I'd seen it before, clipped to the zipper of my son's backpack weeks ago, dangling like it didn't matter. Back then, he told me it was just school stuff. Now it was under my seat, in my car, in my space. My kitchen was quiet in that after-dinner way, the kind of quiet that makes you hear your own thoughts too clearly. I set the flash drive beside my laptop and stared at it like it might jump up and confess. The clock above the stove ticked. The refrigerator hummed. The house did what houses do when there's one person left inside them. I used to have someone to share silence with. My spouse had been the kind of person who could sit at the table with coffee and say nothing for 10 minutes, and it wouldn't feel empty. It would feel safe. After the funeral, after the condolences, after everyone stopped checking in, the silence changed. Silence became a place where you notice everything. That's why I noticed the seat rail in my car looked scuffed. That's why I noticed the driver's seat was pushed back farther than I ever leave it. That's why I noticed my son's smile had become something he wore instead of something he felt. I plugged the flash drive in. A folder popped up immediately, like it had been opened 100 times and never properly closed. The folder name punched me harder than the grief ever did. Alden_Cross_estate. My name. My life. Packaged neatly like a file that could be moved around. Inside were subfolders with dates, scanned documents, and audio files. I clicked one. At first I heard static, then the soft sound of a car engine, then my son's voice, calm and careful. "Don't rush her," he said. "She's still in that fog. If I push too hard, she'll get suspicious." A second voice answered him. Female, familiar in a way that made my skin tighten. "She won't get suspicious," the voice said. "He always handled things. Now you handle her." My son exhaled through his nose like he was smiling. "I know, but we do it clean. No drama." Clean. I felt my stomach turn, not because of what he said, but because of how easily he said it. He wasn't angry. He wasn't desperate. He sounded trained. Then he said the sentence that made my hand go cold on the mouse. Once she signs a power of attorney, she can't block anything. Power of attorney. Those words aren't just paperwork. They're a leash. They're quiet theft. They're a way to take a person's voice and make it legal. My throat tightened, but I kept listening. The second voice got sharper. "And if she refuses?" My son didn't hesitate. "Then we go with Plan B, the evaluation. We already have the notes." Evaluation. I sat back slowly, like the chair might tip if I moved too fast. My mind tried to reject it, tried to make it something else. A misunderstanding, a bad joke, a role play for some class project. But the folder name was my name. The documents were real, and my son's tone was not joking. I clicked out of the audio and opened the documents folder. There it was, a scanned copy of my driver's license, a copy of my spouse's death certificate, a bank statement, a draft letter with a law office header, a property transfer document that looked halfway filled out. Then I saw it, a form titled Capacity and Competence Assessment Request. My eyes blurred for a second, Not from tears, but from rage that had nowhere to go. They were going to call me unstable. They were going to turn my grief into a weapon. They were going to tell the world I couldn't be trusted to own what I'd helped build. A notification popped up in the bottom corner of my laptop. A message. Kellen, hey, did you move my flash drive? I can't find it. My son. Casual. Light. Like he was asking where I put a spoon. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. My heart thudded once, heavy and slow. I didn't reply. I pulled the flash drive out, set it on the table, and stared at it like it was a live wire. The front door handle rattled. A key turned. My son was home. I heard him step inside, toss his shoes by the wall, and call out like everything was normal. Mom, you still up? I didn't answer. He walked toward the kitchen, and I shut the laptop softly, leaving the flash drive right there on the table, visible, daring him to react. He froze in the doorway. His eyes went straight to it. Not to me. Not to my face. To the flash drive. For half a second, the smile didn't show up. For half a second, his real face slipped out. Then the smile returned, too smooth, too quick. Oh, he said lightly, stepping closer. There it is. He reached for it. I placed my hand over it before he could touch it. His smile tightened, like a belt pulled one notch too far. What's that? He asked, still pretending. I kept my voice level. You tell me. His eyes flicked to the laptop, then back to my hand, then up to my face, measuring. Mom, he said softly, it's just files. School stuff. You know I'm working on that certification. I stared at him. Why was it under my car seat? For the first time, he blinked too slowly. It fell, he said, and the lie landed like an insult. It fell, I repeated, tasting the words. Under the seat rail, pushed deep. His jaw twitched. Then his voice changed, just slightly. Less sweet, more firm. Why are you going through my things? There it was. Not fear, not guilt. A shift into control. I took my hand off the flash drive and slid it toward myself instead. His smile vanished again. His eyes hardened, and in that moment, I saw a stranger wearing my son's face. He leaned in, lowering his voice like he didn't want the walls to hear. You're tired, he said. You've been through a lot. You don't need to stress yourself with stuff you don't understand. I held his gaze. I understand enough. His nostrils flared. He straightened up, forcing calm back into his posture. Give it to me, he said, and it wasn't a request. I didn't move. He took a breath through clenched teeth, then smiled again, but this time it was sharp. Fine, he said. Keep it. I'll get it later. He turned and walked away, footsteps steady, like he'd rehearsed how to leave without looking guilty. But right before he disappeared down the hallway, he paused. He looked back over his shoulder and said something that made my stomach drop. Just don't make this harder than it has to be. He said it like he was warning me, like I was the problem. And as his bedroom door clicked shut, my laptop chimed softly again. Another file had finished copying. Everything was mine now, and I finally understood what the flash drive really was. It wasn't hidden for safety. It was hidden because my son thought I was already under control. 3 months earlier, I would have told him my son was my anchor. I would have said he was the reason I got out of bed on the worst mornings. I would have said he was the one who made grief feel less heavy because he showed up. He cooked. He handled calls. He spoke to people for me when I couldn't find the right words. That's how it starts. Not with a punch. With help. After my spouse died, my house turned into a place full of paperwork. Letters from banks. Insurance forms. Requests for signatures. Things that arrived in thick envelopes and made my chest tighten before I even opened them. My son stepped in like a hero. I'll take care of it, he'd say. You shouldn't be stressing over this. At first, I was grateful. Then I got used to it. Then I stopped checking. He'd sit at the dining table with my laptop open, tapping away with that focused look he used to have when he studied as a teenager. Sometimes he'd call out, Mom, what's your middle name again? Or, Mom, what's your maiden name spelled like? And I'd answer without thinking because why would I suspect my own child? When a letter came in with the bank logo, he'd be the first to pick it up. When my phone rang, he'd say, "Let me get that for you." Even my passwords started to become our passwords, and I didn't notice the shift until it was already normal. The first time I felt something off was small. I walked into the living room, and he closed my laptop so fast it made that sharp snap sound. He looked up and smiled. "Just sorting your email," he said. I laughed, trying to keep things light. "Since when did you become my secretary?" He smiled bigger. "Since you needed one." It sounded loving, but now, thinking back, it also sounded like ownership. The second time was when my sister started showing up more. Not the kind of showing up that feels like comfort. The kind that feels like supervision. She'd bring food, sit on the couch, and ask questions that sounded caring but didn't feel warm. How much did the insurance pay? Have you moved the savings? Did you change the house deed yet? Who's listed on your accounts now? If I hesitated, she'd laugh and say, "I'm just looking out for you." And my son would nod along, eyes calm, like they were both in agreement that I needed managing. I told myself I was being sensitive. I told myself grief was making me suspicious. Then my son borrowed my car one afternoon. He didn't ask like he used to. He announced it. "I need your car for a bit," he said. "I'm meeting someone about paperwork." "Whose paperwork?" I asked. He kissed my forehead like I was a child. "Adult stuff, Mom." When he returned, he handed me the keys and smiled. But the smile didn't reach his eyes. That night, I noticed my glove compartment was slightly open. I opened it fully and saw nothing missing. But something in my chest stayed tight. 2 days later, I was in the kitchen when I heard my son on the phone in his room. The door was ajar just enough for his voice to slip out. He wasn't loud. He was careful. "She doesn't read everything," he said. "She just signs." I froze with a dish in my hand. A pause. Then he continued. "No, she won't fight it. She hates conflict. She's tired." He sounded like he was describing a stranger. I stepped closer without meaning to. My heart beat loud in my ears. Then I heard the second voice, faint through the speaker, and my skin prickled. "Make sure she signs before she gets advice," the voice said. "Once she talks to someone outside the family, it's harder." My son lowered his voice even more. "She trusts me." The words sat in my chest like a stone. I backed away from the door quietly, like the floor might betray me if it creaked. That night, I sat alone at the dining table and stared at the place he always sat when he handled my things. I looked at the stack of papers he'd told me were done. I realized I couldn't remember what I'd signed and what I hadn't. And that was when fear finally showed itself clearly. Not fear of being alone. Fear of being used. Still, even then, I didn't confront him. Because there's something painful about admitting your own child might be the person stealing your future. So I stayed quiet. And he got bolder. The next week, my sister came over with a folder and a smile that looked too practiced. "Sweetheart," she said, stroking my arm, "we should put things in order. It'll help your peace." My son stood behind her, nodding like he was approving a plan. "We'll take care of you," he said. I remember looking at them, both smiling, both so sure, and thinking something I couldn't say out loud. If you're really taking care of me, why do I feel trapped? By midnight, the house was asleep except for me. My son's door was closed. My sister was long gone. The neighborhood outside was quiet in that deep way where even the streetlights feel lonely. I sat at the kitchen table with the laptop open again, the flash drive plugged in, and my hand steady in a way that surprised me. People think revenge starts with rage. Mine started with clarity. I created a folder on my desktop and labeled it something simple. Copy. Then I copied everything again. Not because one copy wasn't enough, but because my son had been counting on one thing. That I'd panic. That I'd confront. That I'd cry and beg for answers. And if I did that, he'd have time to clean up. Time to delete. Time to rewrite the story. So I didn't give him time. I opened the Plan B file again. There were notes inside. Typed notes. Clinical words. Subject displays confusion. Subject appears emotionally unstable. Subject has difficulty tracking financial decisions. Subject. That was me. The next document was worse. It was a draft email addressed to a doctor's office, requesting an evaluation and attaching a short list of observations from a concerned family member. The concerned family member wasn't my son. It was my sister. I stared at her name typed neatly at the bottom and felt something in me crack, not loudly, not dramatically, just a clean break, like a thread snapping. Then I found the calendar file. An appointment set for the following week. A time, a location, and a note that made my throat tighten. Bring her early. Keep her tired. No time to talk alone. My son wasn't just trying to take papers. He was trying to take my voice. I clicked into the audio files again. A newer recording played. My son's voice sounded closer, sharper, like he didn't know he was being recorded, like he was comfortable. She won't even notice the land transfer, he said. She doesn't check anything. My sister laughed, soft and ugly. Of course she doesn't, she said. She's a widow, not a CEO. Widow. They said it like it meant weak. Then my son said, once I control the account, we can budget her, give her a monthly allowance. She'll be grateful. Grateful. I pressed pause. My hand shook for the first time, but not from fear, from the feeling of being reduced. I stared at the flash drive, at the files, and I realized the truth that hurt the most. My son didn't think he was doing something wrong. He thought he was taking what he deserved. I opened the messages folder. Screenshots of texts. My son updating my sister advising him. Then a third number appeared in the thread. No name saved, just a number. The messages read like business. Documents ready. Get signature. Don't let her read. We file immediately. I scrolled up and saw the sender's signature on one message. Office. Not a person. An office. A professional hand guiding this. Someone outside my family was helping them turn my grief into paperwork. I leaned back in the chair and stared at the ceiling. For a moment, I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because the betrayal was so layered it felt unreal. Then I stood up, walked to the sink, ran cold water over my hands, and looked at my reflection in the dark window. My face looked the same, but I wasn't the same. I turned back to the laptop and did the next thing. I emailed the entire folder to an account my son didn't know existed, an old account I kept for emergencies. I attached every file, every screenshot, every audio clip. Then I sent a second email to my closest friend, a person outside the family, with one sentence. I need you to keep this safe. Don't reply. Just save it. My heart hammered as the email sent, because now the evidence wasn't just in my house. It was out. And if my son tried to erase it, he couldn't. The next morning, I acted normal. I made breakfast. I asked my son if he wanted tea. I smiled when he smiled. I let him think the flash drive was still safe under my seat, untouched, a secret still hidden. But as I watched him eat, I noticed something I hadn't noticed before. He didn't look like a son protecting his mother. He looked like a man waiting for paperwork to clear. And that's when I decided something else. I wasn't going to confront him first. I was going to confirm everything, lock down what I could, and then I was going to make him walk into his own consequences. Because if I moved too early, he'd run. And if he ran, I'd lose more than money. I'd lose control of my life. So I waited. But I didn't wait helplessly. I waited like a trap waits. Subscribe now. This is how families steal quietly, not subscribing. Comment why you feel safe. 2 days later, my sister came back with that same folder. She didn't knock the way she used to. She walked in like she had a key to my life. Sweetheart, she said, bright voice, I spoke to someone who can help you get settled. My son appeared behind her like he'd been waiting for the cue. Mom, he said gently, this will take stress off you. I looked at the folder. Then I looked at them. Who is someone? I asked. My sister waved her hand like details were annoying. A professional. A small office. They handle estates and things. Estates and things. I nodded slowly, like I was considering it. My son's shoulders relaxed. He thought my silence meant surrender. Let me see, I said, reaching for the folder. He slid it to me quickly. Too quickly. Inside were forms stacked neatly. Some had sticky notes. Sign here, initial here, date here. I flipped through slowly, pretending to read while my mind moved fast. There it was. Power of attorney. Durable. Broad. I traced a line with my finger where my name would go. Then I looked up at my son. Why do you need this? I asked softly. His smile held. It's not me, he said. It's for you. If anything happens, someone needs to help. I tilted my head. Help how? He exhaled like I was being difficult. Pay bills. Handle paperwork. You know, basic stuff. My sister leaned in, voice sweet. It's peace of mind. You've been forgetting things. I held her gaze. What have I forgotten? She blinked once. Just once. Then she smiled wider. You know, she said quickly. Small things. Appointments. Calls. My son jumped in, calm but firm. Mom, you've been overwhelmed. I sat back and folded my hands on the table. Read this part out loud, I said, tapping a clause with my fingernail. My son's eyes flicked to the page. His jaw tightened. It's standard, he said. Read it. I repeated. My sister's smile twitched. My son leaned forward and read quickly, skipping words, rushing. I stopped him. Not that. The next paragraph. He paused. His eyes moved again. His throat bobbed. He started reading, slower now, and the sentence landed clear. The attorney would have the power to transfer property, to access accounts, to make decisions without my approval, to act as me. I watched my son's face as he read it. And right there, in the middle of the paragraph, he made a mistake. He said, once we sign this, then caught himself and changed it to once you sign this. Once we. It wasn't a slip of tongue. It was a slip of truth. My sister laughed too loudly. He means the process, sweetheart. My son stared at me, eyes sharp now. Mom, don't do this. Do what? I asked. Make it a fight, he said, voice dropping. You don't need that. I held his gaze and asked a question I already knew the answer to. Did you hide a flash drive under my car seat? His face went blank for a split second. My sister's hand tightened on the folder. Then my son smiled again, smaller this time. You're imagining things, he said. I nodded, like he convinced me. Maybe I am, I said calmly. And that calm made them both uneasy, because people who imagine things don't ask questions like that. I closed the folder gently. I'll sign, I said. They both relaxed at once. But not today, I added. Tomorrow, at the office. Official. My sister opened her mouth to argue. I raised one hand. Tomorrow. Official. My son stared at me, trying to read me, trying to decide if I was bluffing. Then he nodded once. Fine, he said. Tomorrow. They left with smiles, but the moment the door shut, my hands started shaking. Not because I was scared of them, because I knew I had just stepped onto a narrow bridge. And if I slipped, they'd take everything. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, the copied files open, the documents from my sister spread out beside them like a mirror of betrayal. I made a list. Not a dramatic list. A practical one. Password to change. Accounts to lock. Property status to verify. A real lawyer to call. A witness to bring. Because revenge without control is just emotion. And emotion is what my son was counting on. At 8:12 a.m., I walked into a small law office across town. Not the one my sister mentioned. A different one. One I found myself. One with glass doors and a receptionist who looked me in the eye like I mattered. The lawyer listened without interrupting while I explained everything. The flash drive, the files, the planned evaluation, the power of attorney. When I finished, the lawyer leaned back slowly and said, "You came just in time." My chest tightened. What do you mean? If they file this first, the lawyer said, tapping the paper, you'll spend years undoing it, and they'll control your money while you fight. My stomach dropped. Can we stop it? I asked. The lawyer nodded. Yes, but we move now. We spent the next hours locking down my accounts and drafting a formal notice that any attempt to present power of attorney documents without independent legal counsel would be reported. Then the lawyer looked me straight in the face and asked, Do you want to involve authorities? I swallowed. Not yet. Not because I wanted to protect my son. Because I wanted to protect the plan. The plan needed one more thing. Timing. I left the office and sat in my car for a long moment, staring at the spot under my seat where the flash drive had been hidden. That little place had become the center of my life. My phone buzzed. A text from my son. Kellen, tomorrow, 10 a.m., don't be late. Bring your ID. Don't be late. Bring your ID. Like I was a child going to an appointment he scheduled. I stared at the message until my vision sharpened into something cold. Then I typed back, okay. I drove home, walked into my house, and for the first time since my spouse died, I felt something that wasn't grief. It was power. Because tomorrow, my son thought he'd be the one holding the pen, but I'd be the one holding the proof. And when he walked into that office, confident and smiling, he wouldn't realize the trap had already closed behind him. Subscribe. Tomorrow is when the mask fully falls, but if you won't subscribe, explain why in comments. By sunrise, my hands had stopped shaking. Not because I felt safe, but because I'd finally stopped guessing. There's a strange calm that comes when you realize the worst thing isn't coming. It's already here, sitting in your living room, smiling at you, calling you Mom. I spend the morning doing the things nobody thinks about until it's too late. I changed every password. Email, bank, phone provider, cloud storage, even the little accounts I barely used. I switched my recovery questions to answers my son would never predict. Not birthdays, not favorite colors, not the names of pets we used to have. I moved my important papers out of the filing cabinet he'd been hovering around for weeks and into a lockbox in my closet. Then I moved the lockbox somewhere else entirely. Every action was small. Every action felt like I was pulling my own life back inch by inch. At 9:10 a.m., my phone rang. My sister. I let it ring twice before answering, just to remind myself that I still had control over when I responded. Sweetheart, she said, and her voice was syrup thick. Are we still on for 10? Yes, I said. A pause. The faintest pause. Good, she replied. Wear something nice. It'll go smoother if you look stable. Stable. She said it like she cared. She said it like she was already writing the story she planned to tell about me. When I hung up, I stared at the wall for a long moment, letting that word settle. Stable. If I didn't play this right, they would use my grief like a stamp. They'd mark me unstable and sign over my future while I stood there trying to convince people I was still myself. If you've never had someone try to rewrite who you are, you don't know how terrifying that is. Have you ever felt like someone was quietly taking your life without touching you? At 9:32, I sent one more email to my friend, short and clear. If anything happens today, open the folder. Then I sent a second email to the lawyer I'd met yesterday with one sentence that felt like a prayer. I'm walking into it now. My son was already waiting when I stepped outside. He stood near my car, hands in his pockets, pretending it was just another normal day. He wore a clean shirt like he was going to church. The kind of outfit people wear when they want to look trustworthy. He smiled when he saw me. There you are, he said softly. You okay? I nodded and forced my voice to stay even. I'm fine. He opened the passenger door for me like a gentleman, like he was still the boy I raised. As I slid into the seat, my eyes drifted to the space under me, under the seat rail, under the carpet edge, under the place where he thought he'd buried my freedom. The flash drive wasn't there now, of course. He'd learned his lesson after last night, or maybe he thought he had. As we drove, he talked like he always did when he wanted to control the mood. Light topics, grocery prices, a neighbor's new fence, small distractions. I listened and nodded at the right moments, but my mind stayed sharp. Then he said something that made my stomach tighten. After this, he said, you won't have to worry anymore. I stared out the window. About what? He chuckled. About everything. Bills, decisions, stress. You'll just live. Live. Like living meant sitting quietly while other people made choices for me. A few minutes later, he added, casual as breathing, Auntie said you've been forgetting appointments. I didn't look at him. Did she? Yeah, he said. But it's normal. You've been through a lot. The way he said it was gentle, but the meaning underneath was sharp. He was planting it. The idea that I wasn't okay. He wanted that story to exist before any conflict happened, so when I pushed back, he could point and say, "See? She's confused." We pulled into a parking lot outside the office my sister had chosen. It was a small building with tinted windows and a sign that said it handled estate services. Not a law firm, not exactly. Something in between. A place that could feel official enough to fool someone who trusted family. My sister was already there, standing by the door like she owned the place. She kissed my cheek and held my shoulders, looking me up and down. "Good," she said. "You look well." My son stepped beside her, and for a second they stood too close, like two people sharing a secret. We walked inside. The waiting area smelled like air freshener and old paper. A receptionist greeted us. I was moving from my son to my sister to me, then back to my son. That alone told me everything. They'd been here before. My sister spoke for me, of course. "She's here to finalize the documents," she said brightly. The receptionist nodded like she recognized the sentence. We were led into a small office. A man came in, shook my hand, and called me Mrs., even though nobody had said my title. He had a folder ready. Not just ready. Arranged. Sticky notes placed. A pen positioned perfectly. He smiled at my son first, then at me. "Today is simple," he said. "Just a few signatures." My son rested a hand on the back of my chair like he was being supportive. It felt like a handcuff. The man began explaining, but he talked too fast, like he didn't want me to absorb anything. My sister nodded along, smiling, and my son watched me like he was watching a door to see if it would open. Then the man slid the power of attorney page toward me. The line for my signature waited like a trap with neat handwriting. My son leaned in and whispered, "Just sign, Mom. Then we're done." I picked up the pen. My sister's breath hitched. My son's shoulders loosened. And that was when I did the first thing they didn't expect. I looked at the man and said, "I want an independent witness." The room went still. My sister blinked fast. "Sweetheart, you don't need." "I do," I said, still calm. "If this is clean, it won't matter." My son's smile tightened. "Mom, stop making it complicated." I held his gaze. "If it's not complicated, why are you nervous?" A small silence opened like a crack in glass. The man cleared his throat. "We can proceed without that. Then we don't proceed," I said, setting the pen down. My sister's voice sharpened. "Alden, you're acting strange." There it was. Strange. Next would come unstable. And I realized something in that moment. Sitting in that office chair with their eyes on me, they weren't just trying to get my signature. They were testing how easy it would be to erase my no subscribe. This is how consent gets stolen in families. Not subscribing? Comment why you think you're immune. My son tried to save it with charm. He leaned closer, voice soft enough to sound caring if you didn't know him. "Mom," he said, "you're spiraling. Let's just finish this." Spiraling. He said it like it was a diagnosis. My sister picked up immediately, her face wearing disappointment like a costume. "Sweetheart, we're only helping you," she said. "Don't embarrass yourself." Embarrass. That word wasn't meant for me. It was meant to box me in, to remind me that the worst thing a grieving woman can do in public is look difficult. I looked around the office. The tidy shelves, the framed certificate on the wall, the closed door. Then I looked at the man holding the folder. "If you're legitimate," I asked, "what's your license number?" My sister flinched. My son's eyes snapped to me, sharp and warning. The man gave a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You're confused about what we do." Confused. They were layering the words now. Like bricks. I nodded slowly, then reached into my bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper. The legal notice my real lawyer had drafted. "This is what we're doing," I said calmly. "We pause. We verify. I report." The man's smile froze. My son's hand tightened on the chair behind me. My sister's voice rose just slightly. "Alden, you don't need to threaten anyone." I looked at her. "You don't need to rush anyone." For a second, Nobody spoke. Then my son stepped around, crouched slightly so he could look into my face like he was a reasonable one. "Mom," he said, "you're making me look like a villain." I stared at him. "Are you?" His eyes flicked, just once, toward the folder, toward the pen, toward control. Then he shifted tactics. He stood up and turned to the man. "Give us a minute." The man hesitated, then left the room. My sister stayed. My son leaned in, voice dropping low. "You're going to ruin everything," he hissed. I kept my voice quiet too. "You already did." His jaw clenched. "You think you're smart because you found some files." I tilted my head. Files with my name. Files about evaluations. Files about taking my property. His face tightened. I watched the mask slip again. "Not fully. Just enough. You don't get it," he said. "You don't know what you're doing." "I know you hid a flash drive under my seat," I said evenly, "and I copied it." For the first time, I saw fear flash in him. Real fear. Then my sister took a sharp breath like she'd been slapped. "Copied it," she repeated, too fast. "Why would you do that?" I held her gaze. "Because you weren't honest." She recovered quickly, her voice turning sugary again. "Sweetheart, you're grieving. You don't understand how paperwork works." I almost laughed at how predictable it was. My son stepped closer, his face inches from mine now. "Delete it," he said. "No." His eyes hardened. "Mom, I'm trying to protect you." I looked at him for a long moment. From what? My own choices. His nostrils flared. Then he said the line that told me everything I needed to know. "If you don't sign, you'll force my hand." Force your hand. I felt my heart kick hard against my ribs, but my voice stayed calm. "What does that mean?" I asked. My sister jumped in quickly. "He means he'll have to take over. You're not well." "Not well." I stood up slowly, keeping my movements measured. "You want to call me unstable." I asked. "Do it." Both of them froze. "Say it out loud," I continued, voice steady. "Say you want to take my rights." My son's lips parted, but nothing came out, because saying it out loud makes it real. And real is where consequences live. The door opened. The man returned, smiling like everything was fine. "Ready to sign?" he asked. I looked him straight in the face. "No," I said. My sister's smile cracked. My son took a step forward, voice louder now. "Mom, stop this." I turned toward the receptionist desk outside the room and spoke clearly. "I need the phone," I said. "Now!" The receptionist blinked, startled. My sister moved fast, reaching for my arm. "Alden, don't." I stepped back. "Don't touch me." People in the waiting area looked up. Eyes on us. Public. That was the last place they wanted this. My son forced a smile, trying to calm the room. "She's just overwhelmed," he said, speaking to the air like I wasn't there. I pulled out my phone, and I pressed play. My son's voice filled the office. "Calm. Cold. Planning. Once she signs a power of attorney, she can't block anything." The room went silent. My sister's face went pale. The man's smile vanished. My son lunged toward me, hand out, trying to snatch the phone. I stepped back, held it higher, and said the sentence that felt like justice. "I copied everything. Someone else has it too." His hand froze midday. His eyes widened, and for the first time, he looked like a boy who'd been caught, not a man in control. Nobody moved for 2 full seconds after the audio ended. Not my sister, not my son, not the receptionist, not even the man with the folder. The air felt thick, like the whole office had inhaled at once and forgot how to breathe. Then the man cleared his throat, his voice suddenly careful. He said, "Where did you get that recording?" I didn't look at him. I looked at my son. He was staring at me like he was seeing a stranger. "You did that," he whispered, and his voice shook, not with sadness, but with fury. "You set me up." I tilted my head. "You set yourself up when you hid it." My sister found her voice next, sharp and desperate. "This is private family business," she snapped at the receptionist. "Don't just stand there." The receptionist stiffened. My son stepped close again, his face hard. "Turn it off," he said. I held my phone steady. "No." His eyes flicked toward the door. For a split second I thought he might run, but he didn't. He did something worse. He leaned in and lowered his voice, making it intimate, making it threatening without sounding loud. "You don't know who you're embarrassing," he said. "People will hear this." I stared at him. That's the point. The man with the folder shifted in his seat, discomfort rising. "My services are done," he said quickly, standing. "This appointment is over." My sister stepped in front of him, blocking him like a shield. "No," she said. "You can't just." He held up both hands. "I can, and I. He walked out. The receptionist looked terrified, glancing between me and my son like she was trying to decide which one was dangerous. My son turned to her, forcing his smile back. "She's grieving," he said again, as if repeating it enough would make it true. "She's confused." Confused. There it was again. That word meant to erase me. I walked forward, voice firm, and spoke to the receptionist like she was a person, not a prop. "Can you write down the time and date of this appointment?" I asked, and the name of the person who scheduled it. My sister's eyes went wide. "Alden, stop." I ignored her. The receptionist hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yes." My son's face changed. He realized I wasn't just exposing him. I was building a record. His voice sharpened. "Mom, get in the car." I turned my head slightly, still calm. "No." He stepped closer, anger leaking through. "You're going to regret this." I held his gaze. "So are you." My sister grabbed my wrist suddenly, her nails digging in just enough to hurt. "Enough," she hissed. "You're destroying your own son." I yanked my arm back and raised my voice just enough for the waiting room to hear. "You were going to call me unstable," I said. "To steal my life." My sister froze. People stared now. Full attention. My son's face went tight with panic. He reached for my phone again, faster this time. I moved back instinctively, and my foot caught the leg of a chair. For a heartbeat, I wobbled. My son's hand closed around my wrist, hard, not caring, controlling. And in that instant, the receptionist did something I didn't expect. She stood up and said, loud and firm, "Sir, let her go." My son released me like he'd been boned. The room watched him, not as a devoted son, as a man who grabbed his mother's wrist in public. My sister tried to recover, smile shaking. "She's just emotional," she said. I lifted my phone again and looked at my son. "I have the file where you said, Plan B, the evaluation." His face drained of color. My sister whispered, "What file?" I watched her realize, in real time, that my son had recorded more than she thought, that her words were captured too, that she might not be able to talk her way out of this. My son's voice went low. "You're enjoying this." I shook my head slowly. "No." Then I said the truth that hit harder than any insult. "I'm surviving you." I turned to the receptionist and asked for the officer's email so I could send a copy of the notice from my lawyer. I asked for the scheduling record. I asked for the name of the person who uploaded the documents. Each question was a nail. My son stood still, eyes locked on me, realizing he couldn't stop the fall now, not without making it worse. My sister's voice broke. "Alden, please, think about the family." I stared at her. Then I walked out of that office without signing anything. My son followed me outside, his footsteps fast. In the parking lot, he grabbed my arm again, but softer this time, like he'd learned from the audience. "Mom," he said, voice shaking, "you're ruining my life." I looked at him. "You were ruining mine." His mouth opened, but no words came. I pulled my keys from my bag and pointed to my car. "Go home," I said. He stared at me, eyes wild. Then he did what I should have expected. He smiled, not the friendly smile, the one that means someone has decided you're an enemy. "Okay," he said softly. "We'll do this the hard way." He turned and walked to his car, leaving me standing there with the sun on my face and a chill in my bones. Because now I knew. If he couldn't control me with paperwork, he would try to control me with reputation. Subscribe. When control fails, they attack your name next. If you won't subscribe, comment what you do instead. The phone call started before I even got home. First my sister, then an aunt, then a cousin I barely spoke to. By the third call, I stopped answering and just watched the screen light up like a warning sign. My sister left a voicemail. Her voice was calm, almost soothing, like she was narrating my downfall. "You embarrassed us," she said. "You looked unstable. People are talking." Unstable. She said it with satisfaction. Then my son sent a text. "You need help. I'm calling someone." My stomach tightened. Calling someone meant what? A doctor? A social worker? The police? Or just family members who would show up and pressure me until I folded? I drove to my lawyer's office instead of going home. Not because I was running away, because I was done being alone inside a story they wrote. The lawyer listened, eyes narrowing as I described the office, the folder, the attempt to rush a signature. Then I played the recording again. My own voice sounded steady on the audio, but inside I felt raw, like I'd peeled my skin off in public. The lawyer nodded slowly. "Good," she said. "You did something most people don't do." "What?" "You didn't argue," she replied. "You documented." She made calls while I sat there, hands folded, trying to keep my breathing quiet. Then she said, "We can file an emergency notice today. If they try to submit anything, it flags." A weight shifted in my chest, but relief didn't last long, because on my way out of the office, I saw a message from a number I didn't recognize. "If you don't calm down, we'll handle it." No name, no greeting, just threat. My throat went dry. I forwarded it to my lawyer. Then I drove home, checking my rearview mirror too often, hating myself for it. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed something that made my heart thud hard. A car I didn't recognize parked across the street. Engine off. Someone inside, watching. I sat in my car for a full minute, keys in hand, staring at that car, waiting to see movement, waiting to see if it was coincidence. Then the driver's door opened. It was my son. He stepped out slowly, like he'd been waiting for me to arrive. He walked toward my driveway and stopped a few feet away, hands open like he was peaceful. "I just want to talk," he said. I didn't get out of the car. I cracked the window slightly. "Talk." His eyes looked tired, but the tiredness felt practiced. "You made me look like a criminal," he said. I stared at him. "You recorded yourself talking about taking my rights." He shook his head. "You don't understand. Auntie was pressuring me." Auntie. Now he was throwing her under the bus. I felt something sick twist in my stomach. That's what fear does to people like him. It makes them turn on each other. "You said Plan B." I reminded him. "The evaluation." His face tightened. "You're taking it out of context." I almost laughed. Out of context is what liars say when the truth is too clear. He stepped closer, voice softening. "Mom," he said, "I'm still your son." I stared at him through the glass. "And I'm still your mother." He looked at the house behind me. Then, "Stop, please." "Stop what?" He swallowed. "Stop this before it gets worse." There it was. Not regret. Fear of consequences. I leaned closer to the cracked window and asked quietly, "What were you going to do after I signed?" His eyes shifted away. That was the answer. My son exhaled and changed tactics again. "If you keep pushing," he said, "family will step in. They'll say you can't manage." I felt cold crawl up my spine. He wasn't threatening me with court yet. He was threatening me with people, with shame, with a crowd. I sat there, breath steady, and said the line I'd been practicing in my head for days. "You don't get to call me unstable because you got caught." His jaw clenched. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled again. And this time, it wasn't anger. It was calculation. "Fine," he said softly. "You want war? You'll get it." He turned and walked away, back to the car across the street. As he drove off, my phone buzzed again. A new message, from my sister this time. "We can settle this quietly. Come alone." Come alone. That's how traps begin. I stood in my driveway, staring at the message, and realized the truth. They weren't done. They were just changing the method. I didn't go alone. That's the lesson people learn too late. If someone is trying to isolate you, isolation is the weapon. Refuse it. I told my lawyer about the message. I forwarded everything. I took screenshots. I asked her one question that felt like swallowing glass. Can they force an evaluation? She looked at me carefully. They can try, she said. But attempts like this, they backfire when documented. Backfire. I like the sound of that. Because the truth is, my revenge wasn't about screaming in a parking lot or humiliating my son for sport. It was about building a wall so high they couldn't climb it again. That afternoon, I met my sister in a public place, not because I wanted peace, but because I wanted witnesses. A cafe. Bright. Busy. Cameras in the corner. People everywhere. My sister arrived wearing a soft sweater and a wounded expression, like she was auditioning for sympathy. She sat across from me and sighed dramatically. "You've made this so ugly," she said. I took a sip of tea. It was ugly before I saw it. She leaned in, voice low. "You don't want the family turning against you." I stared at her. They can turn. The truth doesn't move. Her eyes narrowed. "What do you want?" Finally, a real question. "I want you to admit it," I said, out loud. "Here, that you plan to take control." She scoffed, then caught herself and softened her face again. "Sweetheart," she said, "we were trying to protect you." Protect, the favorite lie. I pulled out my phone and slid it across the table. I didn't press play. I didn't need to. I just showed her the file name. Capacity and Competence Assessment Request. Her face drained. She whispered, "You don't understand how these things work." I leaned forward slightly. "Explain it to me." She blinked fast. "It's just a precaution." "A precaution," I repeated, voice calm, to call me unstable. Her hands trembled around her cup. "Your son is scared," she whispered. "He thought you'd waste everything." I felt heat rise behind my eyes, but I kept my voice even. "You taught him to see me as something to manage," I said, "not someone to respect." Her mouth tightened. Then she did the thing people do when they realize they've been caught. She got angry. "You were never good with money," she hissed. "You were always emotional." He was right to step in. There it was, the truth without perfume. I sat back and nodded once. "Thank you," I said quietly. Her eyes widened. "For what?" "For saying it plainly," I replied. "Now there's no confusion." She stared at me like she wanted to flip the table. Instead, she leaned forward, voice sharp. "So what now?" Now came the part they didn't expect. I told her calmly that the lawyer had filed notice, that the banks were locked, that any attempt to submit documents would be flagged, that the office they chose had been contacted, that I had witnesses to the rushed signing attempt, that I had copies stored outside the house. And then I said the sentence that landed like a door slamming. "If you try again," I said, "I report everything." My sister's face went stiff. "You wouldn't," she whispered. I looked her in the eyes. "Try me." She sat back, breathing hard, and for the first time I saw her the way I should have seen her years ago. Not as family, as a person with an agenda. When I got home, my son was waiting in the driveway. Not across the street this time. In my driveway, like he still belonged there. I stopped my car and stepped out slowly. He looked at me with a face that tried to be soft. "Mom," he said, "we need to fix this." I crossed my arms. "How?" He swallowed. "I'll delete everything. We'll move on." I almost laughed. Delete everything. As if deleting proof erases the intent. "No," I said, "you don't delete. You face it." His eyes darkened. "So you're choosing Auntie over me." The manipulation was so clumsy now it almost felt pathetic. "I'm choosing me," I said. His jaw clenched. "You're going to ruin our relationship." I stepped closer, voice quiet. "You already tried." He flinched like the truth physically hit him. Then he said, "If Dad was alive, he wouldn't let you do this." I felt something crack. But I didn't let it show. You don't get to use him like that, I said. Not after what you did. He stared at me, and for the first time, I saw something real. Not love, not respect. Regret. But regret that came late, only after the trap closed. He spoke quietly. So what happens now? Now. I breathed in slowly. Now you lose access, I said, to my accounts, my papers, my life. He looked stunned. I'm your son. And I'm your mother, I replied. That doesn't make you safe. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, like he wanted to argue but couldn't find words that weren't selfish. Then he asked a question that landed heavier than the threats. Will you ever forgive me? I stared at him for a long moment. Forgiveness is a word people throw around like it's a reset button. But life doesn't reset. I don't know, I said honestly. But I know this. I stepped closer, keeping my voice calm, and said the lesson my whole body had learned. Love isn't permission. Trust isn't automatic. Boundaries are how you survive family. He stood there in silence, and as I walked toward my front door, I glanced once at my car, at the driver's seat, at the place where this began. A small hiding spot, a small device, a big betrayal. The flash drive wasn't the weapon. The belief that I wouldn't notice was subscribe. Betrayal hides best inside family routines. If you won't subscribe, comment why you still feel safe.